Okay, let's just do this. I didn't realize my laptop was almost dead, so now it's slowed down to a crawl because I'm at 1%. So let's do this. So a few quick announcements before we go. I posted the course evaluation incentive. I think I was pretty open about what this is going to be. Maybe not to the class, but at least to some students. But I'm going to drop a certain number of homework objectives based on the percentage rate, the response rate of the course evaluations. So the course evals, it's, of course, you probably heard this 100 times, so I won't dwell on it, but it's valuable feedback. We use that, me and my colleagues use that to improve all our courses, especially with this course being so new. This is the third offering of it. I really take that feedback seriously. I want to know how to improve this course. What's working, what's not working, where were the pain points. I want to know all that information so I can improve the course moving forward. So please fill out your course evals. My way of incentivizing you to do that is I'm going to drop a certain number of homework objectives based on the response rate, which as of about an hour ago was 50%. So we're getting close to that first homework objective being dropped. Dropping homework objectives does create some ambiguity in the way things are graded. I say all homeworks are graded equally in the syllabus. But if I'm dropping objectives, well, first of all, the way I look at the homework grading is there are 20 objectives, and I just average all 20 objectives, and that's your homework grade. That's the way I like to look at it. But if I'm dropping an objective, we can get different scores if I drop an objective on a homework and then calculate your 4 homework grades and then average those together based on if I average your 19 remaining objectives. That can be 2 different scores. So what I'm going to do is compute both of them, and whatever one's higher, that's your homework grade for the course. And if there are other ambiguities, I'll always take the one that benefits you the most. For example, dropping, if you have 3 ones and we're dropping 2 objectives, and 2 of them are on one homework, one is on another one, is it better to drop 1 from that homework and then the other homework, or both of the ones on a single homework? If there's a calculation that helps you, I'm going to take the one that helps you the most. So any ambiguities are going to work in your favor. If I'll post the final percentages. If you have a way of computing that percentage that's higher than the way I computed it, let me know and I'll change that grade, especially if it makes a difference of a letter grade. That's important to make sure we get that in there. And I had I can just click right here. Of course. We're at 52%. So we're getting there. I just posted this yesterday, and it's been kind of skyrocketing since then. So I'm confident we'll definitely get at least 1 homework objective. I'm guessing 2 or 3. 4 is a bit of a stretch, getting to 90%. There are certain students in every class who just won't lift a damn finger to do anything, even to save their own grade. There are students who are probably gonna, there might be a student, this always baffles me, by the way. There might be a student who's on the line of failing who will fail the course with any of these and pass with this one, who still won't fill out the evals. Drives me insane. I've had students like this come into my office not complaining, but like, what can I do to pass this class? And then I like to ask, well, did you fill out the course evals? No. The hell, man? That's the one thing you can still do. It drives me nuts, but it's just part of the way things work. That's usually why they're in that position in the first place, is a general pattern of behavior. So it's not surprising, but it's frustrating. So don't get your hopes up for 4 homeworks dropped. 4 objectives drops, but 3, I think that's achievable, especially in this class. I think we can get there in a junior level class with a pretty strong incentive. And the homework grades haven't gone super great all semester. There are only a very small handful of students who don't need any objectives dropped. Even if none of them fill it out, we'll still get to 80 and maybe even 90. But I think this benefits everybody, so most people. So at least 80% of the class. So that's the incentive. I'll keep updating this. I keep updating the current response. I'm not going to try right now because I'm in student display mode, so I don't accidentally dox anyone. And last time I tried to do anything while in student mode, it went back to instructor mode and started doxing people during lecture. I'm not going to do it. But I will click this guy to see what we're doing today. There's only one response to my what should we do in lecture this week. So, and no upvotes on it. So whatever, I'll run with it. I got something. I'll take this over literally nothing. So this is what we're going to do. Can you give a sample of login registration with Ajax to use for reference for the homework? I'll use this as a jumping off point. I won't get to this right away, but I'm going to take this as a sign to do some live coding. I don't think I did. I really didn't do much live coding this semester. Something I really like to do in lectures is live code and just show you, the process of how you can get stuff done. I think I only did one day of that. So by default, if nobody has any other suggestions here, I'm going to do live coding for 2 days. Why not? And just, I'm going to take that server that I did live coding with before, where I was showing you how to structure without a big else if block, and I'll just keep expanding that until we run out of time on Friday. Oh, that's the other announcement I want to make. The schedule, just in case you don't remember when you're presenting or whatever, I don't know, it's mostly for my reference, I guess, but the presentation schedule is up. The one difference here, the one change, nobody signed up for the first 40 minutes of the final exam time, so we're going to start at 8:40. I'm not going to start at 8 and then say, well, there are no times, so you got to go at 8 o'clock. I'm not going to do that. Since nobody signed up for those slots, that doesn't make sense. So we're going to start at 8:40, and then it's back-to-back. Whenever the previous team is done, we're going to go right into the next team until we're all out of teams. So if you're one of the last teams, like this is technically was the 10:50 time slot for devs, but we're going to go back-to-back. If these don't all take up the full 10 minutes, which they might not. We might even go overtime, which then I got to start rushing people and try to keep us on schedule. I don't have a good feel of how presentations are going to go in this class. That's because the first two offerings, presentations were videos because we're in COVID. We haven't had presentations in this class before. So the structure that I'm asking you to do with the 3 parts, I don't have a sense of how students are going to interpret that and how long things are going to take. So I might be rushing you, or you might be finishing early. I just don't know yet. So if you're one of these later teams, don't take a risk. Show up, ideally at 8:40, and make sure you're getting your stuff on time. If you're here for the lectures, if you're one of the teams during one of the lecture times, show up at the beginning of lecture. Obviously, don't take a risk on that. And next Monday we only have 2 teams. I miscalculated a little bit, and I made more time slots than I needed to. So we have 2 time slots here and 3 time slots here that went unused because I was over by 4. But I thought I was over by 1, but I forgot that during final exam week, we can take a whole 60 minutes per hour instead of 50 minutes for the lectures. If anybody's wondering what mistake I made. I was thinking 5 presentations per hour, or 4 presentations per hour. I don't remember what I was thinking. I'm still confusing myself. But anyway, that's what's up for that. This week we'll just do more examples. Any questions? Anybody have anything before I go into some code? Let's do this. 8%, all right, now we're cooking. Now we're doing the thing. All right, and we have, so last place we left off, we actually added HTTPS to our server. Sound low. Everyone see that fine? I don't want to mess with the blind. And we did add an HTML, I think I did this outside of class actually. I have just a quick HTML page and added that to user pass. I want to refactor this a little bit. I might even sit down for this. I want to refactor this a little bit. No, I'm not going to sit down. To be able to get this where it should be. I was going to try to sit down at this desk so you could still see me and stuff. But if I'm sitting down here, I'm hiding behind this monitor. And get this out of user paths. This shouldn't be in user paths at all. So I'm going to create a new Python file. I'm just going to call it other paths. And then I'm going to put the rest of the paths that we add in this other paths. So let me get this. Let me just get a little cut and paste going on here. Remove all of this. Import route. Let me autocomplete, come on. Import my route, get rid of that error. Generate response. Yeah, that's fine. Util.response, import, generate response. And it's generally good to organize your imports. I like to put any Python level imports above all of my imports. So import JSON is going to go above here. So whenever I'm importing something from the standard library of the language I'm using, those are my first imports to make it just a little bit more clear, what's being imported here. And these are all my code. I know this block of imports is going to be importing from the project itself, just to keep things a little bit organized. Sometimes people like to even comment that to make it super explicit. My imports or something like that. I'm not going to do that, but having a nice order to the imports is nice. And usually it's, I like standard library imports, external library imports, and then my imports of my own code. I don't have any external library imports for this file, so skipping that section. I want to add pass method. And home is just going to respond with the home, oh, I'm not even reading the thing. I got to remember how to do this in Python. With open, let me just hard code this. This is not helping IntelliJ. Public/index.html as homepage. Sure. Homepage dot read. Can I assume that reads the whole thing? Why are there no comments here? Oh man, I'm just gonna guess for now. Text HTML. I'm gonna go to my server. from user.otherpaths, import add paths as other paths. And other paths of self.router. So we want to get those paths added. Do they do anything with WebSockets? I just set it up without actually doing it. So let me run this because I don't know if this reads all of the bytes, if it's going to read as bytes or strings. I just don't remember, which is a good demo, good example, which is why I like doing live coding, because you get to see nobody remembers all this stuff. I'm going to try to avoid Googling, but like Googling is just a standard thing in this industry. Senior devs who have been doing the same thing for decades still Google things on a daily basis. So we're just going to go to, I look at my port. What port am I using? 8000. And we're going to go to localhost 8000. Site can't be reached. No error messages though, because I didn't do HTTPS, because we're secure now. Help me understand. Oh, freaking Opera. That's the worst feature. Why? Just why? Restart this. So Opera won't even load pages with self-signed certs. If the cert doesn't end with a I can't talk and type at the same time apparently. If the site doesn't end, the certificate doesn't end with a root CA, blanking on the term here. If it doesn't end with a root CA, the keychain, then it's not going to work for you. I got to remove this. Just already in use. Of course it is. And by the way, when you're testing something like this where it's just does the home page load, this is a case where we usually don't use unit tests. I mean, you could if it was a large-scale production app that you want to absolutely make sure everything's working. You're going to write some tests for that and make sure. But in something like this where we're just moving, I like to call this moving data around. It's a lot of what we do as software engineers. I'm moving bytes from this file through a TCP socket and sending it to the user over HTTP. I'm just moving data around. There's not a whole lot to test. Don't get me wrong, we can and probably should, depending on the app, write a unit test for it. But with this, load the page, make sure it shows up. It's really all the testing you need for something like that. And then whenever you're doing logic, that's where you want your unit test. If you're actually processing data, that's where you want to test for sure. But when you're just moving a piece of data from point A to point B, the tests, I mean, yeah, but what are you really testing on that? All right, so we got this working, but it's a little, not exactly the way I want it. We got all these new lines. So let's go to other paths. And I'm going to try this. What do I have? Why do I have it set up like this? Why am I turning that to JSON? I just want body.encode. Okay, we got our HTML. I don't know why I was changing that to a JSON string. It didn't make sense in the other context either. It was just a regular string. It wasn't made to be JSON. It might have been a cut and paste error. All right, so we got our path for our home page. And at this point, now we can get to the question or the suggestion in the Piazza post. So what we want to do is get our, a lot of this will be front end, get our forms for our registration and login to be able to use JSON. So let me build the forms first, and I'm not going to use an actual form because a form is going to send it in the three ways, the three encodings that we saw, either plain text, URL encoded, or multi-part. We don't want any of those three. If we want to use JSON, we got to do things a little bit different. The form's not going to do it for us because the form, literally, those are the only three choices. You can't, there is no fourth option for a form. For an HTML form, the way HTML works. So we're not going to use, we could still use the form element and then do our own processing in JavaScript. But I'm not even going to use the form element at all, just because it doesn't really help us here. It doesn't give us what we want with the JSON. Maybe someday it will, maybe it won't. I mean, we all have other solutions for this anyway, which I'm about to show. But there's no real reason to have it, but maybe someday. All right, so let me build the registration form. Break, fine, div. I don't have to, this is more for commenting purposes. To put this div here, I just want to put a div, since I don't have a form element, I'm going to put a div here just to remind me that, hey, all of these elements are the registration form. Because I'm just going to build a whole bunch of elements that are kind of loose around the page. This div is going to collect them in a more meaningful way. When somebody's reading this code, they're going to know what this is supposed to be. So username, input. Let me give these a few names. Username, name, username. Password. Password input. So I'm going to get my two inputs here. Actually, I don't even need names on this. I'm going to delete the name because those aren't going to be used anyway. And then register. Get my new line. So it should show up the way that I want. Don't need this div. And I'll just it'll be the same stuff for either form. So I'm just going to build one of them, at least for now. If we have time after that, I'll probably build something else instead of doing the same thing with just login instead of register. You know what? I will do 2 passwords though. Why not? Two. Okay. Now we're going to need something else here. We're going to need some JavaScript, which is actually going to do our processing. We already established that HTML alone is not going to be enough for us. We only have those 3 encoding types, none of which are JSON. So we're going to need to change. We're going to need to do our own processing. We're going to have to write some JavaScript. I always tend to name my JavaScript file functions. I'm still going to do it. Functions. It's such a boring name, but that's, it's descriptive. It's what it is. It's just a JavaScript file with all my functions in it. And I want to write a function call it submit registration form. So I can take any inputs, and this is where I'm going to do all my processing. And let's finish up our HTML here. I'm going to go to my button and say on click. Call that function. And give me my, oh my goodness. I forgot what it is. What is, I thought it was source. I guess not. On click, on focus. Why would you need those for a script tag? It is source. What the hell? And then import my thing. And I'm also going to need another path here. Add route. At this point, this is where I would say everything in the public folder, host that, and I do this more generically. I'm only going to end up having 2 files, so I'm just going to hard code it here. But you would want something like that at some point. Get slash functions.js, right? JS? Sure. Give me another one of these. Let's make this at least a little bit generic here. Send file name, let's make this a little more accurate, MIME type. I still need the handler, don't need the requests. I'll send it anyway. Send file public functions.js. Text JavaScript request handler. Grab this, change this, delete this, format to make it clean, and we're looking good. I like that. Let me refresh this, make sure I didn't break anything or do anything silly. We'll even do some debugging there. Localhost didn't load. Public index.html. What's this file or directory? We'll ignore that. It's a bad typo. Address already in use. I don't feel like waiting this time, so I'm going to change my port. Spec element. Expected token less than. Wait, where? Functions 2? There's almost nothing there. How did I mess up? Registration form. Come on, take me there. Functions.js, public text JavaScript, network. Anybody see my next mistake? Oh my, what am I doing there? JS, it's sending the HTML when I'm requesting slash functions. Oh boy. That's a big problem. Because this has to be last. Because this path is going to match all the time. I have to put my more specific paths first. Hello. If you haven't seen this before, this just means that same exact message was printed 21 times. All right, so everything's looking good there, and we're ready to go into our JavaScript and start implementing this thing. And if you haven't noticed, this is the way I like to code. I highly recommend this, one step at a time. Don't try to write a ton of code. This is one of the biggest mistakes I see students make, at least in office hours, the students who make it to office hours. They'll try to write 100 lines of code and then hit go and say, it's not working, I don't know why. I don't know, try writing like 2 lines of code at a time and test those 2 lines. I wrote like 5 lines of code there, I made 2 mistakes. Let's catch those mistakes one at a time. Never try to do too much. All right, so everything's working. We got our index.html, our functions, JS, both downloaded. When I click the button, I'm calling this function. So I know all of that's working. Now I'm ready for the next step. So when I actually want to submit this form, let's get to the good stuff. We want to grab our 2 elements, 3 elements. I added a second password. We're going to grab those 3 elements and then get their values out of them. And we're going to manually build that JSON string. So I'm actually going to do this in another function. Function get registration form JSON. Sure. Const reg JSON equals get registration form JSON. And then in this function, we're going to get those 3 elements and then get their values. So const username equals username element. I'll type out the whole thing. Document dot get element by ID. Username input. Trying to think of what I called it. Username input. So since that's by ID, this is one nice thing about using IDs. I'm going to get by ID username input. Since IDs have to be unique, I'm just going to get it by ID and say, okay, I have the right element. I have to because IDs have to be unique. If I got these by anything else, like type or name or something, it's going to give me an array of elements. Even if I know there's only one, it's going to give me an array, which is asking for trouble. I'm going to get array of 0 and hope there's something there, and then things are going to crash. I'll get index out of bounds. You know, it's a lot of things that can go wrong. So password, let me do the same thing. Password input dose. And I got the values. Now, or I got the elements, sorry. Now I want to get the actual values out of these things. Username equals username element dot value. Simple enough. Dot value, const password equals password element dot value. Duplicate to 2. And now the reason I don't just slap the dot value here and do it all in one line is because just for a little bit of UX, we don't talk about much UX on the front end at all. But here's one lesson I learned the hard way is after somebody submits, blank out the form. It gives you a little bit of feedback to say, hey, the form actually submitted. I grabbed those values and sent them to the server. If you don't do this, what people tend to do is just mash the send button and send off multiple requests to the server. So we're going to blank out these things. Password element. We're going to blank out the form every time somebody submits. Now you can obviously do more UX than that and give all kinds of feedback and whatnot, but at a minimum, at least blank out the form. And then we're going to return a big old JSON. I did say JSON, didn't I? So let's do this in 2 steps. Const call this an object. Username, and then we're going to return, by the way, JSON.stringify registration object. That's going to be our final JSON that we're sending. Username, password, password 2, password 2. And we got our JSON from these elements. So we got the elements from the HTML that contain, that are the inputs that contain whatever the user put in. It should be self-closing. We got the values from each of those, blanked out the form, created an object with the structure that we want, and then it's going to be important that on our server side, we're expecting the same exact structure. It doesn't really matter what the structure is, but your front end and back end have to agree on that structure. So just be consistent is the important thing there. Then we're going to stringify that thing, turn it into a JSON string. So up here we have a JSON string, which has all the information that we need. We need to ship it to the server. So we're going to create an Ajax request equals new Ajax request dot on ready state change. I'm going to try to remember this. I'm going to try to do this from memory. A function which takes, I might not be able to. On ready state change is a function response maybe. Let me just try to guess this. If response dot it only takes one value. Text, response URL, status. And ready state. Dot ready state equals 4. And response dot status equals 200. I think that's right. I'm a little fuzzy on that one, but and we'll just console.log response text. So right after I say only write a few lines of code at a time, I go and write quite a bit here. So we got a lot to test. And in fact, we have to write a little bit more before we can really test it. Semicolons are optional in JavaScript. JavaScript usually figures out what you mean, but I like to have them there. Oh, we didn't even send the request yet. Request send oh my, there's a lot going on here. I'm getting out of that. All right, I might have to look that up. Did I make a mistake here? Does anybody know an obvious thing that I made a mistake? If not, actually, what I end up doing usually, whenever I write an Ajax request, I actually end up looking at my own notes. Because I already have this, so I'll sort it out. Open, get ready state for status. Ready state for, oh fuck, yeah, we're doing it. Except we don't use the response. We just grab this. The response might be the same object there, but open, post, register, and send. Cool. Post. Yep, cool. Okay. I'm feeling good about all that. And now we need our path of register. So if we get a request for a post for register, let's go to a registration method. We need a request and a handler. And this is where we can finish up for the day. I just want to print request.body. And if everything goes right here, this is a lot of code, so this is too much. I'll be surprised if this goes well the first time. We'll have a few bugs, I'm assuming. But let's see. Let's refresh, just make sure we have all the latest stuff. Got all our code. Oh, I didn't make those password. If you want the stars, you just do password here. And we got an error right here. I think that might mean everything worked. Hell yeah. Yeah, everything worked. I honestly wasn't expecting that. And then the reason it's yelling at me is because I didn't send anything back. Okay, here we go. Build the load response. Because I didn't generate a response. Man, we were doing so good too. Load response. Okay. This one. Worked. We got some nice communication, and then here's where, obviously you would take this body, parse the JSON, and get everything that you want. Get this with a request body decode, if I could type. But you would do all your processing at that point. Okay. See everyone Friday.